Call Allah, Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Dash. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect who are the house of David, reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharala, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians, who before losing their true heritage were known as the Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the wickedness of these Edomites, who today are known as the so-called Caucasian race. Now, to tell this story, we ultimately have to go back to Egypt, and not only Egypt, but we have to go back to the city or the empire which Egypt was under, and that would be Babylon, ancient Babylon. Now, ancient Babylon had a tower known as the Tower of Babel, and this is told in Genesis 11 and 4. And they said, "Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach onto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." Now, you got to understand that this took place about 200 years after the flood of Noah, where you had a king called Nimrod, who had became king over all the inhabitants of the world, which by this time was about 200,000 to 300,000, right? And he put all these people to work to build this city and this tower, right? And it was such an issue that it actually made the Lord pay attention to them, so much so that he went and diverted their plans. It tells you this in verse 7. "Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." And there you go, man. See, because the Lord didn't want them to accomplish what they were trying to do. He didn't want them to get to the point where they were going to be an issue. Now, that's why he went down there and confused their speech. That's why today the term Babel refers to confusion, man. And what was it that they were actually doing there in Babylon, man? They weren't actually just building really tall towers, man. The Lord isn't just a hater of tall buildings. He hates wickedness, man. And that's what these Babylonians were doing. They were being pure, wicked devils, man. They were practicing the pagan beliefs which Egypt had picked up, and ultimately, which these priests in Babylon would practice, man. And this ultimately goes up to that worshiping of Nimrod, Ishtar, his wife Ishtar, and their son Tammuz, right? And their child worship, sacrificing, and all that stuff, man. All goes back to Babylon, which eventually found its way to Egypt, just because of how Egypt was a vassal state to Babylon, man. Let me go ahead and tell you how these devils, these Edomites, got a hold of this knowledge, man. It tells you here, it says, Alexander the Great in Egypt. In the autumn of 332 BC, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in an event that marked the beginning of the Greek period in Egyptian history. He had captured Gaza and led his forces towards Pelusium, the eastern gateway to Egypt. Advancing to expel the Persians from Egypt, he met no resistance either from the Egyptians or from the Persian garrison at the frontier. Thus he entered Egypt easily, and soon afterwards took his forces across the Nile to arrive at the capital Memphis. Alexander was welcomed by the Egyptians as a triumphant deliverer, and held a festival in the Greek style to celebrate the occasion. And that's what Alexander did. He went around and conquered. And what did that do? That gave all the ancient wicked knowledge that was in Babylon, like you can see Alexander here looking upon the tower, and you can see Alexander here entering Egypt, in a triumphant parade, man. And when he got control over Egypt, he got control of all their secret knowledge, all their past records of that pagan knowledge that Egypt and Babylon held. This is why this is written here in Maccabees. This is First Maccabees 1 and 9. And after this, his death, talking about Alexander the Great, they all put crowns upon themselves, talking about Alexander's 4 generals. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth, right? Because these devils, once these four generals took over the Alexander's kingdom, namely these two devils here. You had Ptolemy, who took over Egypt and had all access to those mystery schools, and then you had Seleucus here, who had access over Persia and Asia, man, which gave him access to Babylon and all those wicked teachings and philosophies, man. And what did they do? That knowledge went on to corrupt them, man. And what are the fruits of that corruption? You know, what are they? They were the teachings of Thoth, right? And which were later on translated and by a Greek who would call himself Hermes Trismegistus. He was an alchemist, ultimately what you would call a witch, right? And he taught all these wickednesses, the wickednesses that you could find in the books that you get to this day, called the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean, right? And then he also had other books, the Book of the Dead, and so many other books, man, in Babylon that these devils gained access to, right? So much so, they use this knowledge to gain power and prominence, you know, and to resuscitate their nation, man, because you see, about 200 AD, these Edomites lost their kingdom. They lost their kingdom of Rome to Jake, right? And then they fled up to the Caucasus Mountains, where they became Caucasians, and they used this knowledge of witchcraft and wizardry to gain access back into the limelight, man. And this is when they took over around 1300 AD, when the Renaissance started kicking off, man. Because they were using all that magic. This is Daniel's 8:25. And through his policy, also, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. That's talking about witchcraft and all the little craftiness he does. And he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, which is Yahweh Shai, but he shall be broken without hand, right? Because these devils are going to actually try to fight against the Lord when he comes back, but it ain't going to work. And here's one of the main devils that actually put up a system known as Satanism to fight against the Lord, man. This guy here, this is Aleister Crowley. He is the forefather to modern day Satanism, man. Here he is with one of his famous quotes. I'm not even going to read this trash, but he fancies himself as the beast. He calls himself the beast. You know, but ultimately he was a very prominent Satanist, Luciferian, who would go on to write books that have basically become the Satanist Bible, known as the Book of the Law. Also, he wrote the pretty much the go-to book for summoning demons, called the Goetia, also referred to as the Lesser Keys of Solomon. This has all the sigils, all the spells you gotta actually chant to summon these spirits. And why is that? Because he studied these books that came from Egypt, man. This knowledge that came from Egypt that ultimately these Edomites, you know, gained access to when they conquered Egypt, man. Egypt and Babylon, right? And this is the wickedness that they've been using. And this isn't in the past, you know. This isn't just, you know, way back in the past. This is, you know, this is from the very foundation of America, man. Here you got the founding father of America, George Washington, dressed up in his Freemason garb, which really, when you break it down, is just Egyptian priest garb, right? Hidden from the you know, from the everyday person in plain sight, man. But when you understand what these symbols mean, what these little you know, specialty clothing and hand signals mean, you understand that these guys are just the Egyptians. You know, they're doing the exact same thing the Egyptians are doing, but they're doing it in their own flavor, man, and they're trying to be slick about it. Right? This is why there's books out there that talk about occultic America, right? This is why the Nazis were also after occultic knowledge. They wanted to rule the world through witchcraft, just like America has done. And ultimately, you got some of these Nazis who fled to America through the CIA project called Paperclip, man. And here you got some of their descendants today, man. George Bush Jr., man. You know? And John Kerry, who are part of secret society called 322, and this goes back to Genesis 3:22, talking about once the man knows good and evil, he's going to be like a god, right? That's what these devils believe in shit. This is Nahum 3:4. Because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcraft, that selleth nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcraft. Right? That's talking about Babylon the Great, or America as it's known today. Because you see, America, it is a pagan nation, right? It works off of magic, man, and deceit. This is Revelation 11 and 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the streets of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom in Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. Now, the dead bodies are talking about the Israelites who are just Americanized, man. They're walking around, going to their jobs day in, day out, not knowing what the heck they're doing, but they're spiritually dead, right? And this place is known as Sodom because of all the vile homosexuality here, and it's known as Egypt because of the things I just showed you, man. All the symbolisms, the rituals, the knowledge that they practice all comes from Egypt, man. And it's where it says our Lord was crucified. It basically just means that the Lord, his true image and his the truth of the Bible is basically not taught here in Babylon, man. Now, eventually, this guy here, Albert Pike, another Freemason, right? He also studied these books, and he ultimately would write a book for the Freemasons, like their Bible, known as Dogmas and something, right? But ultimately, it all goes back to Luciferianism and Egyptology, man. But this is one letter that this guy wrote, which I'm going to go and read real quick. It talks about the 3 world wars, and he wrote this in 1871, just to show you that these 3 world wars coming are all been orchestrated. It says, the 3rd World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionist and the leader of the Islamic world. The world must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, economic exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists, the people who don't care about shit, and the atheists, people who don't believe about God, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all of its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origins of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilizations, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deitistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or directions, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into the public view. This manifestation will result in the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. This is Revelations 11 and 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the 3rd woe come quickly. Those woes refers to the 2nd and 3rd World War, which we will be going into, folks. We've been seeing it happen on the news. We've been seeing the nations starting to get angry at each other. It's only a matter of time before the full war starts. So I just wanted to touch upon that. I wanted to show you where these Edomites get their disgusting, wicked power from, which ultimately goes up to Satan. But just wanted to touch upon that. But until the next time, I want to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Kodash, double honors to my teachers, the apostles, and the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.